Hey, what's going on? And welcome back to the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast. Thomas Keenan here. And today I've got Eric Daimler with us. Eric, this guy's got a very interesting bio when I saw it come over. And, for the listeners who are here and all the guests that I get on, like I'm really picky with who comes on the show. Like I've got a fully dialed in process. When I get pitched, when podcast agencies come across and pitch guests to come across for me to interview and have on the show, like I look at all of them with the fine tooth comb and say, hey, is this someone who's really going to be a good fit for the show? Is this someone I can have a really good in-depth conversation with? Is this someone who can provide value to the listeners here? Because at the end of the day, that's really what this is all about, right? So Eric came through the whole process. I saw the stuff come over and I couldn't hit the approve button fast enough on my technology, on my software. So Eric, I'm grateful to have you here with us, sir. You've accomplished some really amazing things in life. You're heavily involved in the AI world right now. You've been involved in politics as well. I don't want to bastardize or butcher your story whatsoever. So please introduce yourself. Tell me a little bit about your history. I want to know a little bit about politics, how you got involved there, and then how the switch came over here to AI.
Thank you, Thomas. Yeah, when I get pitched podcasts to be on, I don't take very many of them either. So yeah, it's good to be here, and I look forward to a good conversation. I've been doing AI for 20 plus years. Often, if people know how people know me, if they know me, is that I spent time during the Obama administration as the first AI authority in the White House. I've been an AI researcher at Stanford and Carnegie Mellon and University of Washington, Seattle, faculty at Carnegie Mellon, Silicon Valley in computer science. I've been a venture capitalist on Sand Hill Road. I've been an entrepreneur 6 times and now my 6th startup, and then culminated in 2016 with working with the White House on AI at the largest scale to help out Americans and our allies. I'm grateful to now just be leading a team that's doing a generative symbolic AI spin out of MIT. We're now we're now a few years into it, experiencing the success that we have been expecting and hoping for. I guess. Yeah. So that's who I am. That's what we're doing.
Love it. You mentioned a couple of things here, and I'm impressed already, but 20 years in AI, right? Most people who listen to this and most people who are, on the internet and doing some research, you're like, oh, AI, that's that ChatGPT thing that came out about 1.5 years ago. Like, yeah, that's part of it. But, 20 years of AI, like, I don't think the general public realizes how long AI has been around and someone like yourself has been involved with it. So give us a little bit of the history into say 20 years ago. Like how did this start? How did it become a thing? And how did it get to where it is now, where it's readily available to almost anyone at their fingertips?
Yeah. We can talk a little bit about the different flavors of AI and perhaps how it evolved. I mean, my PhD is in the area, so I could go probably deeper than most people would care to talk about for very long. But back in 1956 is often, there's a prehistory to AI, but 1956 is often thought of as the birth of AI and certainly birth of the term, with some quite notable people that got the whole research area started. It began to enter some degree of public imagination when I was a little kid, and the expression was in expert systems. That's a good old-fashioned traditional AI. IBM's Watson was a public expression of that, but people may be familiar with. That never worked at scale. It broke pretty quickly, and it became a big part of a disappointment that only alleviated itself during the early 2000s with the rise of machine learning and a probabilistic AI that then showed itself to be far superior than symbolic AI for certain applications. Mm-hmm. The building of a machine that played chess better than humans, that played the board game Go better than humans, and then evolved into machine learning, and then deep learning, and then the neural networks that express itself in probabilistic generative AI that we see over the last couple of years with ChatGPT and others. So that's a broad sweep of how this is flowing. But this is not the end game. there's a future from here. It's just the exciting current moment we live in that's been a result of some mathematical discoveries and some massive applications of scale. When I was a researcher, I worked on this ability to predict what people would say to other people. We worked around 10, maybe 20 words in prediction. ChatGPT can often be thought of as doing that same sort of thing. And autocomplete is how people talk about it. A stochastic parrot is sometimes how people talk about it. But it does it at the scale of 32,000 words.
Wow.
half a book. That is both true and minimizes the significance of that technology, as we've all experienced. One of the things we talked about before we got on was the practical applications for everyday working professionals, whether they're working on their own or working in small teams and businesses. I encourage everybody to keep a tab open on their browser and experiment with these different technologies. ChatGPT is just one, Perplexity is another one, Pi is another one, and sometimes these are built into technologies like Adobe has, Microsoft has, and others, just to experiment with how this can improve your workflow. What I use it for right now is often to create first drafts of different pieces of writing that I'll need to create. And I also do it to summarize or look for errors in some other pieces of documentation. I mean, I have a 48-page legal document that certainly I need to have the lawyers review, but I will use some of this generative AI to help me review it a little more quickly for myself. Where this goes in some of these applications among small teams then becomes an issue of collaboration. That's where to look at it, besides just this autocomplete, besides just this drafting of memos, or besides just this creation of poems, which was the party trick that started this whole thing in many ways. What we do at Connexus AI is we have this ability to have people collaborate on their views of the world. And their views of the world in a business context will often get expressed as people having different Excel models. And so we work with this one large company that needs to develop this critical infrastructure. They'll have a petroleum engineer, a mechanical engineer, a civil engineer that all have their different expertises represented by formulas, often in Excel. Today, that process requires people almost often literally sitting in a room and talking about their Excel models, or emailing Excel models as email attachments. Right? How much better is it to have an AI just suck in all of the Excel documents and reconcile the totality of different people's worldviews from their own pieces of expertise? Sure. Just have the AI come up with the answer, the formulation that composes all of those different worldviews. The benefit of this is it is materially faster, like by an order of a couple of orders of magnitude. Sure. It is therefore materially cheaper, and perhaps the most important thing is it increases the integrity. So you materially increase the safety and reduce all these meetings. This is how we're going to show increases in productivity, I think, over the next year to two. Is people are just going to not need to meet as much, and they're going to be able to collaborate with more efficiency. So anyway, that's one example of how generative AI in a particular context can be used in teams that need to collaborate.
Yeah, that's wild. Just thinking that everyone's got their own version of Excel and they're using it to do their work, and then boom, all of this flows up into one piece, and then there's my mind goes to it. Okay. Here is the we'll call it the master Excel file, right? The master workbook. And in the master workbook, it has the actionable data. The data that really is going to allow you to make the decisions needed to drive the business forward, or spot an issue before it really becomes an issue. And like you said, I mean, if all of this is flowing into one spot, imagine okay, we don't have to send Slack messages to each other. We're not getting on Microsoft Teams or Zoom to have these meetings. We're not meeting in person. How many man hours are we saving? And what does that do from a financial perspective to the companies that are involved?
Yeah, the good part about this, in many ways, is people don't have to have as many meetings. The bad part about that is that if we often reflect on much of what people do in offices with a lot of glass on the walls, is they coordinate these meetings, and we coordinate with each other. If we don't need to do that anymore, whole layers of management just evaporates with some degree of rapidity.
Yeah.
It's really quite frightening and exciting, right? It's exciting that you're going to have increased productivity and you don't have to go as many meetings.
Yep.
It's scary that your job could be eliminated with a speed that you may not have been ready for.
Yeah, that brings up a really good point, and I want to point this out too. Most people, when they think about AI or automation, think about, okay, I just went to McDonald's and now there's this kiosk there that I used to check out versus going to see the person at the counter. Right. So most people think of, okay, those are the jobs, the entry level frontline worker jobs are going to be the ones that are replaced. No one thinks that, oh, the middle management roles inside of big corporations inside the US, those are the roles that are going to go away. It's almost like eliminating the middle class, but on a work perspective.
Yeah, I actually can. There's an argument when I was in spending time in the White House where people. I talk to members of Congress all the time about the threat to jobs from AI and from automation. And at a societal level, this is just nothing but goodness, because you and I enjoy a better standard of living than our ancestors because of increases in productivity, full stop. But as an individual, it's frightening because there's disruption in every individual job. The jobs that are going to be lost are going to be a lot of these middle manager jobs. But what is going to be increasing for demand, we'll say the job boom that is created from AI, is going to be an increasing demand for experts. One reason that we don't hire more experts to guarantee the integrity of a 737 MAX is we can't deal with the throughput of those experts, because we already are spending this enormous bloated infrastructure coordinating among these different viewpoints. If you're putting together an engine and a fuselage and a wing, and each engineer responsible for those components already has their own interpretation of vibration, trying to reconcile whether those interpretations of vibration cancel each other out or whether they're additive is a lot of work. But if you could just put more engineers on this and then suck it all into a generative symbolic AI like Connexus AI has, well, that's just a wondrous solution, because you brought in more integrity to it and still was able to save money and save time. So anyway, that's where the future goes. I think there's going to be a loss of jobs, but there's going to be an increasing demand for jobs. It's going to be great for society, but disruptive for the individual.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And if we look back in history, I mean, that's pretty much what happened when, certain roles, certain positions went away. Yes, there's no longer a need for this position. However, this one now has popped up and people are going and getting educated and going in those roles and producing the work. So with that being said, speaking now, forget the past, now here in the present and also in the future, what are some of the roles, if you could talk on this with your expertise, what are some of the roles that you think, and if you can use the specifics, that'd be awesome. What are some of the roles you think that are going to go away over the next 5 to 10 years? And what do you see is going to be the replacement for them?
Yeah, I can speak to one in particular, which is this role of data scientist. So for a while, it's not so long ago that we thought data scientist was perhaps the pinnacle of what we'd wish for our children in some regards, right? They're like, hey, go be a data scientist. It's a lot of money. And it looks like that's going to be a career with some legs to it. The problem is 80% of that job as a data scientist is this work of data engineering. It's the work of bringing data together. making data available. And that's really boring work. People don't actually like to do data engineering because it's really manual, digitally manual, but manual. This is, however, a very big business. So Deloitte makes about 1.7 billion a year from this. Accenture makes about 5.6 billion a year from it. The other large consultancies that your listeners may have heard of, such as Infosys and Tata and Wipro and Tibco, these are multiple billions of dollars, splitting about a $50 billion annual market. Much of that market is going to be automated away. I don't know whether it's going to happen in 3 years or 8 years, but that job's going to be automated away. That's thousands upon thousands of jobs. The people don't want to do that work, really. It's boring, but they do it, and it pays pretty well. But that's going to be disruptive to the individual. Overall, it's going to be probably good for those companies, overall good for society, but disruptive for the individual. What's going to replace it is any number of places where you can apply expertise. Engineering roles in accounting, in law, where you can develop specific, particular knowledge that is difficult to duplicate. And I can say one more thing about that. We all have to be comfortable with this idea of acquiring new skills, and at the same time recognizing that the half-life of useful skills itself is shrinking. So we can't just go with that old 80s terminology of reskilling, which got tired shortly after it was said. we have to get comfortable with this as a constant, ongoing process. We're going to learn something, and then slowly, people like me automate it. That's just the nature of it. And we have to be conscious about for our own work. What part of our own work today are we doing, and tomorrow might be automated. That is the future cycle. So the jobs that are going to be replaced, data engineering, some degree of data science. The jobs that are going to emerge, any place there's expertise, but with decreasing half-lives on the skills that develop.
It makes a lot of sense to me. I read something, an article 6 months ago, a year ago, and it was basically saying that, hey, back in the day, our parents' generation, dad, for the most part, went to work, and he worked for the same company for the 25, 30, 35, 40 years, right? Got the gold watch at the end, and he spent his time there. And now the average the average person that goes to work is 3 years or less they're spending at a position or a role. Right. And I don't know the validity of those numbers, but if I recall correctly from the article I was reading, it was somewhere around there. So we've gone from this, hey, we go into this one role position, we spend a career there, or most of our career, and now we're down to, hey, let's go change our underwear every 3 years.
And we just have to get comfortable with what that looks like. We thought, as you said, that some manual work was going to get automated, but it's hard to predict, even for people that have spent their lives in this domain. It's hard for me to predict where this is going to show up next. Just to quantify this a little bit, we are doing Connexus AI is doing this cloud migration. So everybody's heard of these cloud migrations. We're migrating people from this one other large company from SAP onto Snowflake. A whole bunch of large companies involved, right? This company was going to do this project in 2 years, and they were going to dedicate hundreds of people to this project. But if you automate it, we have about a 200 to 1 labor compression from automation. I mean, if you automate it with an AI, you do it in about a week, as opposed to 2 years. Like that's the difference. You can't fight that. There's no amount of free. This is the thing about us being scared about low cost labor taking our jobs. You can dedicate thousands of free laborers to that sort of work, and you can't compete with AI.
That's wild, right there. It really does quantify. It's like, hey, let's go hire hundreds of people and put them to work for a year or longer, or let's just go and invest in the AI and get it done in a week.
Hundreds of people for 2 years versus just get it done in a week. Right.
Here's the question, right? Because like if we scale it back down here, let's say we go into ChatGPT and we say, hey, I need an outline for a presentation or a speech I'm going to give, and we use that and it gives us the framework. It's a template. But before we finalize it and put out the polished product, we've got to go in there and do a little bit of editing, a little bit of tweaking and changing. Does the same thing apply at scale on a big project like this?
So what we've done, it's a good question. So what we find is that the people need to spend, the AI forces you to spend the time up front that you would have spent time doing anyway, but later on. So right now, we work, Connexus AI works with this big bank that collects a lot of data. And everybody gets the memo, data's in oil and all that. So they're collecting more and more data, but they are using a smaller aperture of the data that they're collecting. So they're just seeing through the small pinhole. They're collecting more and more, but they're seeing through a small pinhole. And so what our AI does is be able to collect and use all that data. But what it forces then is the visibility of this data that sometimes has contradictions, and you got to then resolve it. And so one example was in viewing all this data, this bank saw that these two large clients were in the same risk bucket, and they were supposed to have been in different risk buckets, which is really strange because they were both large clients of a large bank. So they got a lot of attention, and no one was able to notice, because of the complexity of the totality of the relationship and the involvement, that they were misplaced as in their risk profile. Only the AI was able to determine that, and the AI just determines these logical contradictions, points out when in these large enterprises that you have to go correct something. So the work to be done just brings that forward. So going back to where we may have started is in the airplane, where the AI doesn't reconcile the issue with vibration between a fuselage and a wing and an engine. It just forces the issue back to the engineers if the AI determines that a logical contradiction exists between the representations of the engineers in those three components of an aircraft.
Wild. This is really interesting to see where things are going, and I really appreciate you kind of peeling back the onions of the layers of the onion to give a guy like me who's definitely not involved like you are, and to get a deeper understanding of what's currently out there and where it's going. So I've got a question for you that falls more on the personal side of things, if you don't mind. And it's not too probing, I promise. So how does a gentleman like yourself, you're a very accomplished, you're a highly educated man, you've got a lot of really wild, cool things you've done in life. How do you continue to stay on top of the game, and how do you continue to basically learn and stay at the top of the field in the AI realm?
It's hard. Because as much as everybody else experiences an increased velocity, I experience it too. Yeah. There are, I forget the number, but there's some scarily large number of new AI academic papers coming out every day, and it's something on the order of the amount of academic papers that I used to go through in a month is something now that appears every day. And academic papers can be pretty dense. In my previous life, I mean, I could spend a day just reading one academic paper to make sure I really understood it. And I can't obviously afford that today. Yeah. What we find that we have to do is pick a lane. Me as a CEO of an organization, what I do is I have to go from a company that has no structure and add structure. So my job changes really over time. As someone that needs to stay current with AI to some respect, I read what I can, but in a particular domain of AI. So what we do, what Connexus AI does is we work in this area of AI on critical infrastructure. That's where we're at. So when lives are at stake, when you have to bet your life or Western civilization, on our defense or on banking, that's where we play. All this, I'm going to call it telegenic AI. We don't spend quite as much time on. So I can't read academic papers in all of these domains all at once. I also find it will say that I'm pretty good at math, but I'm not as good as my co-founders are at math. So I have to really relinquish my my need to get into mathematics at the level at which they operate. We do this abstract mathematics called category theory, and a couple of my co-founders have written books on this subject. And I cannot spend my days reading about category theory as much as I would like.
Sure. Hey, look, it makes sense. One of the reasons you have co-founders, or you put certain people in certain roles in a company is, okay, well, my strengths are here. They're clearly defined. Yours are over here. They're clearly defined. And when we put those together, we have this well-oiled machine that just operates together with flow.
Yeah.
So I like it. Tell me a little bit about the company. Tell me a little bit, if you don't mind, tell me a little bit about, the team size that you currently have. And I'd love to learn from a CEO's perspective of a company like Connexus and what you're running. What does your day-to-day look like? What does a successful day look like for you? What has been accomplished? What meetings, what people, what contracts, what deals? Like, what does a successful day look like to you in your eyes?
Yeah. So we have changed over time, and we had a phase where we were doing heavy research. We spent really 20 plus million on in the base level technology to get it to something that is commercializable. And now we are ramping up with our revenue. We'll probably end up into this calendar 24 with about 50 people, scaling quickly. We're globally distributed, and so no one will shed a tear for me waking up to Europe and going to bed to Asia, but it's not what I expected at a company this small. I travel more than I had planned, and probably more than anybody else you will have on this podcast. It's quite strange in that regard. So my wife and I were crossing the Atlantic in opposite directions at the same time a couple of weeks back, and that just is how it's going to work. I meet her in London. I meet some of my nieces and nephews in Mexico. It's just how it goes. We are perpetually experimenting with new structures as I go. As I said, the nature of a startup CEO is a fast-growing organization as we go from a place of no structure to adding structure. So we will experiment with what structures work for us. I'm a real fan of Jeff Bezos's famous 6-page memos. We work with having narratives instead of just PowerPoints because it forces us to confront sloppy thinking. And then for team collaboration, we also just work on constantly getting rid of or diminishing ambiguity. I think that's the rule that we have in our team collaboration globally, whether we have different cultures, we have different training, obviously, and of course we have different time zones. The ambiguity is the part that we find adds bloat and slows our organization. I think this is actually a good lesson for anybody looking to how to train the children, is having a skill of getting rid of ambiguity, identifying ambiguity and getting rid of it. Is I think going to be one of the longer lasting skills of the future.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're correct. So all right, here's some questions I got from you on ambiguity. What can be done? Right. Think of a smaller size company at this time in your head, if you don't mind. What can be done to get rid of some of the ambiguity that may not be just common sense or commonly known to small business owners or operators?
There's a framework that I think applies to small business that we had just as computer scientists, where we could identify pretty early on the people that would be successful in computer science and the people that would not. The people that would not be successful were the ones that would think that the machine would understand them. And the ones that were successful, that we knew would be successful, are the ones that thought the machines are just going to do exactly what I tell them. That's the rule. That these are not smart machines. As much as we use the term of intelligence, as much as we are maybe a little too casual with the term of thinking or generation, they're just machines. They will do what we tell them. So the degree to which we can be extra clear about what we are intending as an outcome, the better served we'll be. Now, there's degrees of this. The most extreme degree is having something that can be read by a computer and encoded by a computer. But at the other side, there are far, far too many meetings, too many communications where people are doing a proverbial hand wave, saying something to the effect of, you know what I mean, and you can get my intent. And that is just something that we need to discipline ourselves to removing from our normal work environment. That is not where the world is going.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's communication, right? And it's something that happens to be a core value of mine personally and professionally. It's, how do I effectively communicate each and every day, and how do I continue to build upon the value and the skill set of communication? And I'm not perfect with it by no stretch of the imagination. I don't think anybody is. But if we go into it with the intention of, okay, this is very valuable, very important, and how do I continue to do it at a high level and get better with it day in and day out? And I think we can just accomplish a lot with that in and of itself. So tell me about what's the future? Like where do you plan on bringing this company? What does it look like for you guys? You're looking to exit this? You're looking to go crank up and start up another company? Like what's the end goal here for you and your partners?
We are on a mission, and we have a discovery in math that we are commercializing into something extraordinary. It's our view that generative symbolic AI is going to be bigger than generative probabilistic AI, today's telegenic AI. How much bigger is the critical infrastructure of the world that's digitally represented than today's chatbots? However sexy they are, however interesting they are, however fun they are to redo memos, how much larger of an opportunity is it to be using AI to manage a power plant, to design an aircraft, to track the ships of the world, to guarantee the integrity of our nation's defense? That's where we are playing, and that is a far, far bigger market. It's my job to develop the infrastructure to have this grow with integrity and speed that is deserving of our customers, of our employees, and of our investors. Everything else, those are just mechanisms to get there. You can't be a responsible CEO and say that there's a financing event that's your goal. That'd be ridiculous, irresponsible, some pejorative I could put in there. Those are just events along the way. We have a mission to bring the world's data together and make it available for critical infrastructure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think it's really important. My version of that is anytime that I've put money first or chased the money, stuff's falling apart in the backside. But when I do something with good intention, good purpose, with a mission, the money happens to be the byproduct of the hard work and the good work and good faith, goodwill that we put into the world.
If we were chasing the money, we'd work at a bank. If we were managing for our own happiness, we would work at a university. I think customers are the number one focus, and obviously we want the employees to enjoy their time working together, and the investors will get a fair return. Yeah,
that's fair. So here's a question I got for you. You've probably faced this one before in the past, but are there any concerns that you or your co-founders have with the future of AI?
The degree to which AI is going to represent this Hollywood level dystopia or AI future of our dreams is really up to all of us. There are decisions that our ancestors made about the shapes of cities, the shapes of roads, literally the widths of roads, that is hard to undo 100 years later. There are cultural aspects to how our country has evolved and other countries have evolved that are a series of decisions. And so I have encouraged everybody to participate in the discussion about how we want to shape the technology as it expresses itself in the world. I've been pounding this table as long as I can remember, and certainly I did it as loud as I could in the White House, but it's and there's nothing like somebody being scared for their jobs that has people take notice, sit up and take notice. So that I just encourage people to do that more and more. Absent feedback from a broader populace, I am just like all geeks like me, sitting in a basement coding. I'm just going to work on my own quarterly objectives, and I would prefer to have feedback in advance so that what I develop is embraced and adopted, not resisted.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes sense for sure. There's nothing worse than putting time, effort, energy into working to building something, and you seem to be the only one who gets it, and the rest of the people around you are like, "Oh, that's useless. It's a waste of time." I have unfortunately been in that situation a couple times, and definitely not at the scale that of what you guys are doing. But it's not a good place. It's not a good feeling. So yeah, I commend you for that for sure. I want to backtrack a second here. You spent a couple of years at the White House, working under the Obama administration. How did that become a thing for you? What was that path? What did it look like? I mean, you've got your education, you've got your time, universities and whatnot, but how did this come about where all of a sudden one day you find yourself at the White House?
It's just a call, and it's a call my wife said I had to take. So that's it. It was the lowest paying job I've ever had, but nonetheless a privilege to serve the American people. It's a little heady because of the scale and certainly the pomp around just all around. It is quite remarkable. Tying into what we're talking about AI, there's the carpet in the Oval Office, at least during the Obama term. I haven't been there during the current administration. In the Oval Office, it said, the long arc of history bends towards justice, and the president would say, not without our involvement. He would add to the staff, not without our involvement does the long arc of history bend towards justice. I offer that phrase to people thinking about AI. This doesn't accidentally represent this fantastic future. People like me might have good intentions, but we need the involvement of a greater piece of society to make sure the totality of people's interests is represented. One of the things interesting in the government is, while in a commercial space we can choose our own customers, we don't have that liberty in government service. We have to serve everybody. But in this particular domain, the consequences are such that I really want everybody to be involved in the conversation, so that this long arc of history of technology affecting our lives and those of our children and grandchildren is better for it. Yeah, that's a really good point you make, and I'm glad that you made it. It's a different perspective that I haven't taken on it, and I think you're right. Hey, this future of AI is only going to go in the path that us, the humans, allow it to, and I think that's important to note. So, with that being said, sir, I've had a fantastic time talking to you here today and learning more about you, learning more about some of the stuff you've accomplished, and obviously some of the amazing things you guys are doing over at Connexus. Tell me a little bit about, or a place that we can go and find out more about you, more about the company, and throw some support and eyeballs onto what it is you're currently doing over there. Yeah, we are connexus.com or connexus.ai. It's a good place to find out about Connexus AI and how AI applies to critical infrastructure. And then we're active on the usual places: LinkedIn, Insta, what have you. Excellent. Sir, thank you so much for coming in today. I really appreciate it. It's a good time. Good to be here.
Thank you for tuning in to the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast. Make sure you head over to stepitupentrepreneur.com and make sure you subscribe so you never miss an episode of the Step It Up Entrepreneur Podcast.